He laughed at his dying wife, bragging that his mistress was richer. Seconds later, he discovered her secret was worth nearly $750 million. What happens next will leave him begging. Hello, my amazing story family. I'm thrilled you're here with me today because what I'm about to share will absolutely leave you speechless. Before we dive in, I have one small favor to ask. If you're ready for a story that'll send chills down your spine, please hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to drop a comment with your city. I love connecting with my story family from all corners of the world. For those who've already subscribed and joined our incredible community, welcome back. You're in for something special today, and tomorrow I have another mind-blowing story lined up that you won't want to miss. Now, let's dive into today's story and discover how it all began. The steady beeping of the heart monitor echoed through the sterile hospital room, a constant reminder of the fragility of life. The lights above glared cold and clinical, draining warmth from the walls, but Amantia Stone lay quietly on the bed, her eyes half closed, her breathing slow and deliberate. Tubes and wires surrounded her, but what hurt more than the needles and IV drips was the heavy weight pressing against her heart. Amantia was a woman who had walked through fire before. She was born on the island of Jamaica, in a small community where the sea breeze carried the laughter of children and the markets buzzed with the sound of vendors calling out their fresh produce. She was the daughter of hard-working parents, who raised her on discipline, humility, and faith. Her mother always told her, "Amantia, you're worth more than gold. Don't ever let anyone treat you less than the queen you are." Yet here she was, lying on a hospital bed in Atlanta, Georgia, listening to her husband mock her when she was most vulnerable. Andrew Mark, her husband of 10 years, stood at the foot of her bed, hands tucked into his tailored pockets, his lips curled into a smug half-smile. His blue eyes had once seemed kind to her, once radiated charm and promise. Now they were sharp, almost cruel, piercing her like knives. "You know, Amantia," he said, his voice low but laced with scorn, "I never thought I'd see the day when you'd look this helpless. Pathetic, really. It makes me wonder if maybe I chose wrong." His words stung like venom. He was the man she had defied her own family for, the man she had stood by against the odds, believing their love could conquer differences of race, culture, and background. She had loved him fiercely. She had believed he loved her too. But as she listened now, something inside her began to shift. Andrew moved closer, pulling out his phone casually, as if scrolling through social media was more important than his wife's pain. "You know, my mistress, Claire, she wouldn't end up like this. She's stronger. She's richer. She doesn't come with all this baggage." He gestured to the hospital bed, the machines, the pale look on Amantia's face. "Honestly, she's a better investment." That word, investment, slid like ice down her spine. That was what she had been to him all along. Memories swirled in Amantia's mind. Her family's angry voices years ago when she had told them she was going to marry Andrew. "He doesn't love you for you, Amantia," her older brother had warned. "You think he see your heart? No, he see your pockets, your potential." Her mother had cried, begging her to reconsider. But Amantia, blinded by Andrew's charm, had insisted love was stronger than suspicion. She had crossed an ocean and carved out a life with him in America, believing she was building a marriage on trust. Now, here he was, confirming every fear her family had ever voiced. A faint tremor of rage surged beneath her skin, but she didn't let it show. Instead, she stared at him with calm, unblinking eyes. Andrew mistook her silence for weakness. He leaned forward, smirking. "Claire actually has family money. Old money. She doesn't have to fight and scrape the way you did. And you know what? I like that. I like being with someone who doesn't drag me down with all this struggle." He gestured dismissively at her again. Inside, Amantia's chest burned. She wanted to tell him the truth, that the woman he mocked so easily controlled a fortune that dwarfed anything Claire had. That while she had lived humbly beside him, she had quietly built and safeguarded wealth worth hundreds of millions. That he had married not just a woman, but a queen in her own right. But she stayed silent. Not yet. Instead, she let her eyes drift shut for a moment, pulling herself back to the shores of Jamaica in her memory. She saw herself as a young girl, running barefoot along sandy paths, her laughter ringing with freedom. She saw her father teaching her how to stand tall, to never let anyone define her worth. She heard her mother's gentle reminder echo again. Amantia, you're worth more than gold. If only they could see her now. If only they could see how right they had been about Andrew. Pathetic, Andrew muttered again, shaking his head as if disappointed. Honestly, I should have listened to Claire. She said marrying you was a mistake. She said you'd hold me back. And looking at you now, he gave a short, cruel laugh. She was right. A nurse entered the room then, checking the monitors, adjusting the IV drip. She glanced at Andrew with a look of quiet disapproval, though she said nothing. But her eyes lingered on Amantia, and in them Amantia saw a flicker of compassion. Someone else could see it, the cruelty she endured. Andrew, oblivious, kept scrolling on his phone. He wasn't worried about her recovery. He wasn't worried about her health. He was worried about Claire, about appearances, about money. Always about money. What he didn't know, what he had never cared to discover, was that Amantia Stone wasn't just a woman lying broken on a hospital bed. She was the rightful owner of an empire worth $700 million. She had been underestimated before, but this time, she promised herself, would be the last. Before we continue, let me ask you, what would you do if your own spouse mocked you on your hospital bed? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button so this story can reach others who need to hear it. The rain had started outside the hospital, its soft pattering against the windows breaking the silence Andrew left behind after stepping out for a phone call. Amantia listened to the rhythm, each drop reminding her of the tropical storms back home in Jamaica. The kind that came without warning, fierce and unrelenting, but always clearing the air afterward, leaving behind a freshness that felt like renewal. She closed her eyes, letting her mind drift back to that island she still called home in her heart. She remembered the smell of roasted corn from the street vendors, the sound of reggae floating from every corner shop, and the warmth of the sun that wrapped around her like a mother's embrace. She had been raised in a small town just outside Montego Bay, where neighbors greeted each other by name and families gathered every Sunday for rice and peas, curry goat, and laughter around the table. It was in those days she had learned what true love looked like. Her parents, though far from wealthy, had built a partnership rooted in sacrifice, respect, and unwavering support. They didn't have much, but what they shared was real. Her father worked long hours as a fisherman, his hands calloused from years at sea, while her mother ran a small produce stall at the market. Together, they built something strong, something Amantia always thought she would one day find for herself. But when she brought Andrew Mark home for the first time, that dream began to crumble. Her family didn't trust him. Her mother's face had hardened as soon as she shook his hand. "Me not trust dis man," she whispered to Amantia later that night. "Him smile, but me spirit uneasy. Him na see ya for your heart, him see what him can tek." Her older brother, Dwayne, had been even more direct. "Sis, listen to me. You've worked too hard for what you've built. This man, he's got smooth talk, but no roots. I've seen men like him. They don't stay when the going gets tough." But Amantia, young and in love, had brushed their words aside. Andrew had been charming then, attentive. He made her laugh, promised her the world, told her that with him she would never have to struggle again. For a girl who had clawed her way from humble beginnings to a rising career in America, it felt like a fairy tale. Against her family's advice, she married him. Now, lying in this hospital bed, she could almost hear their voices ringing in her ears. "We warned you, Amantia. We warned you." Her chest tightened. Not from the IV drip or the shallow breaths, but from the ache of betrayal. The door opened quietly, and Nurse Daniels, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a firm step, walked back in. She carried a clipboard and gave Amantia a small, reassuring smile. "How are we feeling tonight, Miss Stone?" the nurse asked gently, checking the monitors. Amantia forced a faint smile. "Alive, I suppose." Her voice was soft but steady. Nurse Daniels glanced toward the hallway, where Andrew's voice could faintly be heard, his tone sharp as he argued with someone over the phone. She lowered her voice. "You don't need that kind of stress right now. Focus on healing, sweetheart. Everything else can wait." But Amantia knew it couldn't wait. Andrew wasn't just a storm passing through. He was the very thing threatening to strip her of the peace she had fought to build. Her mind wandered again, this time not to Jamaica, but to her years in America. She had come with nothing but determination, working long shifts at diners while attending night classes in business administration. She had risen step by step, from waitress to office clerk to entrepreneur. By the time she married Andrew, she had already begun quietly investing in real estate, guided by instincts her parents had instilled in her. Work hard, save wisely, never put all your trust in others. Over time, those investments grew. She bought apartment buildings, commercial lots, and stocks, often in her own name, sometimes through a family trust back in Jamaica. By the time Andrew began to lose interest in their marriage, Amantia had quietly built a portfolio worth hundreds of millions. She never flaunted it, never spoke about it, because wealth was never her measure of success. Her family, her values, her peace of mind, that was what mattered. Andrew never knew. He had always assumed her modest lifestyle meant she had little to her name. He didn't see the empire she had carefully built brick by brick. And now, he mocked her as if she were nothing, comparing her to a mistress who had old money. The thought made Amantia's lips curl, not in anger, but in something close to resolve. If Andrew thought he had broken her, he was gravely mistaken. He had underestimated her strength, just as he had underestimated her worth. The door creaked open again, and Andrew strode back in, his face red from frustration. He tucked his phone into his jacket pocket and glared at her. "Do you know how embarrassing this is for me, Amantia? Lying here in this hospital while Claire's out there living her best life? She told me I was wasting my time with you, and maybe she's right." His words cut deep, but this time Amantia's gaze was steady. She met his eyes, unflinching, her silence heavier than any argument she could make. For the first time in a long while, Andrew shifted uncomfortably under her stare. And deep within her, Amantia Stone made a quiet vow. "This is the last time you will ever mock me. The last time you will think I am weak. The last time you will take me for granted." The rain outside grew heavier, thunder rumbling in the distance. And as the storm raged, so too did the storm within her heart, one that would soon change everything. Family, let me pause here and ask you, have you ever ignored your family's advice for love, only to regret it later? Share your story in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Your support helps us keep sharing powerful stories like this. The next morning, the hospital buzzed with life. Nurses moved briskly through the halls, wheeling carts of medication, checking charts, and offering tired but professional smiles. The faint smell of disinfectant clung to the air, mixing with the sterile chill of air conditioning. Outside, the rain had stopped, replaced by the golden warmth of sunrise spilling through the blinds. For Amantia, though, the new day brought no peace. She stirred awake to the sound of Andrew's voice, sharp, impatient, echoing across the room. He was sitting in the visitor's chair, legs crossed, phone pressed to his ear. "Claire, baby," he said, his tone suddenly dripping with sweetness, so unlike the mocking voice he'd used with Amantia. "Don't worry about last night. You know you mean more to me than anything." Yes, I'll be there as soon as I can get away from this place. Just be patient with me, okay? She'll be out of here soon enough." Amantia's chest tightened. She turned her head slightly, feigning sleep, but every word carved into her heart like a blade. Andrew chuckled softly into the phone. Honestly, she's just dead weight. Always has been. You, Claire, you're the future. You've got class, connections. Old money. I can't wait to start fresh with you. The call ended with a laugh and a soft love you. Words Amantia hadn't heard from him in months. Her eyes fluttered open, and she fixed him with a stare that made him jolt in surprise. For a moment, guilt flashed across his face, but it disappeared almost instantly, replaced by irritation. "How long have you been awake?" he asked, his tone defensive. "Long enough," she replied, her voice low, heavy with controlled emotion. Andrew leaned back in the chair, folding his arms. "Good. Then maybe it's time we stop pretending. You know as well as I do this marriage has been over for a while. I stayed because, well, I thought maybe there was something worth holding on to. But honestly, Claire is everything you're not." The words landed like thunder in the quiet room. Amantia inhaled slowly, steadying her breath. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of breaking down. "And what exactly is she, Andrew?" she asked quietly. He smirked, leaning forward as if savoring the moment. "She's richer, more sophisticated. She comes from a family with real influence, not like your background." His pause was deliberate, heavy with insult. "She doesn't have to fight for respect the way you do. She just walks into a room, and people know she belongs there." The disdain in his voice was unmistakable. It wasn't just about Claire. It was about her heritage, her struggle, her identity. He had never truly respected her. For a brief moment, memories of their early days together flickered in her mind. When he had swept her off her feet, when he had told her she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, when he promised he would stand with her against the world. She had believed him. She had given him her trust, her love, her loyalty. And this was what she had received in return. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "So that's what I was to you, Andrew? A placeholder until you found someone with a bigger bank account." Andrew shrugged, unbothered. "Don't act surprised, Amantia. You knew what this was. You've never been enough for me. You thought love could carry you through, but let's be honest, you were always reaching above your league. Claire, she gets me. She doesn't make me feel less." It was then that Amantia realized what this was really about. Andrew's arrogance wasn't born of strength, but of weakness. He had always needed someone to prop him up, to make him feel important. He had chosen Claire not because she was better, but because she fed his fragile ego. The pain in her chest sharpened, but alongside it rose something else, clarity. Andrew thought she was broken. He thought she was powerless, lying there in a hospital bed with no one to defend her. But what he didn't realize was that Amantia Stone had faced worse storms than him and survived. He didn't know the depth of her strength, nor the truth about the empire she controlled. Her silence unnerved him. He shifted in his chair, his smirk faltering. "What? No tears? No begging me to stay?" Amantia's eyes narrowed slightly, her voice calm but steady. "No, Andrew. Not today." For the first time, it was Andrew who looked unsettled. The monitor beside her beeped steadily, filling the silence. And though Amantia said nothing more, a promise bloomed in her heart. The day would come when Andrew Mark would regret every word he had spoken. The day stretched on with the slow rhythm of hospital life. Doctors making rounds, nurses checking vitals, the occasional sound of a gurney rolling past the door. But within Amantia's room, tension simmered like a pot ready to boil over. Andrew had left after their bitter exchange, muttering something about grabbing lunch. Amantia thought, for a brief moment, she might have peace. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply, trying to summon strength from within. But peace was short-lived. The door swung open suddenly, and in walked a woman Amantia had only heard about but never seen, Claire. She was tall, impeccably dressed in a fitted cream-colored dress that hugged her figure, her blonde hair swept into an elegant bun. Her perfume, floral and expensive, filled the room immediately. She walked with the confidence of someone who believed the world was hers for the taking. Claire's icy blue eyes flicked over Amantia with casual disdain. She smirked. "So you're Amantia. I've heard so much about you." Amantia's chest tightened, but she kept her composure. "And you must be Claire." Her voice was calm, even, but her gaze sharp. Claire tilted her head, her smile widening. Andrew didn't exaggerate. "You do look tired. Fragile, even. Honestly, I don't know how you kept up with him this long." She leaned against the wall casually, as if she had every right to be there. Every word dripped with venom. "Is this supposed to be some kind of joke?" Amantia asked softly. "No joke," Claire said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Just reality. Andrew and I, we belong together. We come from the same world. Money, connections, legacy. He doesn't have to carry me the way he's carried you." The insult stung, not because it was true, but because it revealed exactly how they both saw her, as a burden. At that moment, Andrew walked back into the room, a cup of coffee in his hand. He froze for half a second at the sight of Claire standing there, then quickly composed himself. "Claire, what are you doing here?" he asked nervously. Claire's smile never wavered. "I wanted to see for myself." She turned back to Amantia. "You know, Andrew told me this marriage was a mistake from the beginning. He said he stayed out of pity. Isn't that right, Andrew?" Amantia's gaze shot to him. Her stomach clenched, waiting for him to deny it. But he didn't. Instead, he sighed and shrugged. "Why pretend anymore? It's true. I stayed because I thought you'd eventually prove yourself. But you never did." Her heart pounded in her chest, not just from betrayal but from rage. Claire chuckled softly, stepping closer to Andrew and brushing her manicured hand along his arm as if claiming him right in front of her. "Don't worry, darling. You don't have to explain yourself to her. She understands. After all, money speaks louder than promises, doesn't it?" Those words struck a nerve deep inside Amantia. If only they knew. Her hands clenched into fists beneath the hospital blanket. She wanted to scream the truth, that she, Amantia Stone, held more wealth than either of them could dream of. That while they paraded around flaunting old money, she had built an empire with her bare hands and brilliant mind. That she wasn't just enough. She was far more than Andrew could ever deserve. But she didn't speak. Not yet. Because the greatest revenge wasn't in shouting the truth at the top of her lungs. It was in letting them underestimate her until the perfect moment came to flip their smug smiles into gasps of shock. Andrew, emboldened by Claire's presence, sneered. "Face it, Amantia. You were never on my level. Claire is richer, classier, and better in every way. You were just convenient. But that's over now." The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. For the first time in her life, Amantia truly saw Andrew for who he was. Not the man she had once loved, but the parasite her family had warned her about. A man who had never valued her, only used her. Her chest ached with pain, but her spirit, her Jamaican spirit, the one raised on resilience, pride, and faith, burned brighter than ever. Slowly, she raised her head, her voice calm, almost cold. "Enjoy your moment, Andrew. Enjoy it while it lasts. Because storms don't last forever. And when this storm clears, you'll see just how wrong you've been." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Claire laughed dismissively, brushing it off. Andrew shook his head, rolling his eyes. But somewhere deep inside, both of them felt a flicker of unease. Because there was something in Amantia's eyes, a quiet strength, a steady fire, that told them this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The hospital room grew quiet after Claire's mocking laughter, and Andrew's callous words faded into the hall. They had left together, whispering like two conspirators basking in their cruelty, leaving Amantia alone in the sterile room with her thoughts. For a while, she lay perfectly still, the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor keeping her anchored. But inside her, Emotions collided like waves against a cliff. Anger, sorrow, shame, and most of all, a dawning clarity that left her breathless. Her chest rose and fell as she whispered to herself, barely audible. "So this is love, Andrew? This is what you call love?" Tears prickled at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not for him. Not anymore. Instead, she closed her eyes and drifted into memory. She was 22 when she first landed in America, carrying 2 suitcases and a heart full of dreams. Atlanta had felt like another world. Skyscrapers that pierced the sky, highways that never slept, and people rushing everywhere with a purpose she had yet to find. She had worked as a waitress in a downtown diner, her Jamaican accent drawing smiles from some and ridicule from others. "Say that again," customers would chuckle, imitating her lilting voice as if it were a joke. She learned quickly to thicken her skin. But it was there she met Andrew. He had walked in one rainy evening, dressed in a crisp suit, exuding confidence and charm. He complimented her smile, asked about her homeland, and left her a generous tip. When he returned the next day, then the next, she thought it was fate. Back then, he had listened. He had asked about her parents, her ambitions, her favorite beaches back in Jamaica. She remembered laughing with him in that booth, feeling seen in a way she hadn't since leaving home. When he proposed 2 years later, her heart said yes, even as her family's voices echoed warnings across the ocean. Now, lying in this bed nearly a decade later, she realized they had been right. Amantia opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling, the sterile white tiles blurring as her mind replayed every red flag she had ignored. The dismissive comments, the subtle digs at her accent, the way he always lit up when talking about wealthy acquaintances but grew distant when she spoke of her family back home. She had convinced herself it was cultural differences, that love could bridge any gap. But the truth was simpler and crueler. Andrew had never loved her. He had loved the idea of her, the hard-working immigrant woman who made him look noble, the exotic partner who stroked his ego, the one he thought had little power, so he could always feel superior. And when he thought she had nothing left to offer, he had found someone else. Her hands tightened around the blanket. But Andrew was wrong about one thing. She wasn't powerless. Beneath her calm exterior, Amantia carried the legacy of her people. The strength of ancestors who had survived slavery, colonialism, and poverty. The resilience of her parents who had raised her with dignity even when money was scarce. The fire of a Jamaican woman who refused to be broken. Andrew saw a fragile patient in a hospital bed. But she knew the truth. She was a fortress, and she had built something no betrayal could erase. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The door creaked open, and Nurse Daniels stepped in again, carrying a tray with a small meal. "Brought you some soup, sweetheart," she said kindly, setting it on the side table. "You need to keep your strength up." Amantia offered a tired smile. "Thank you." The nurse hesitated, then lowered her voice. "That man, the one who was here earlier. Don't let his words weigh you down. I've been working here for 20 years, and I've seen good men and bad men. He's the kind who leaves when you need him most. But you? I can see it in your eyes. You're stronger than you think." The words caught Amantia off guard. For a moment, her throat tightened, emotion threatening to break through. She managed a nod. "I hope you're right." "I know I am," Nurse Daniels said firmly. "Don't let anyone tell you your worth. Only you decide that." After the nurse left, Amantia stared at the untouched bowl of soup. Those words lingered like a seed planted in her chest. Andrew thought she was broken. Claire thought she was finished. But Amantia Stone wasn't done, not by a long shot. Slowly, she whispered into the empty room, her voice steady. "They will see. They will all see." The heart monitor beeped in rhythm with her vow, and though she still lay in a hospital bed, something inside her had risen, something powerful, unshakable, and ready to fight back. The evening light crept into the room, painting golden streaks across the sterile white walls. Amantia lay still, her body heavy with fatigue, but her mind refused to rest. The betrayal she had endured was not just fresh, it was seared into her soul. She thought of Andrew's words. Claire is richer, classier, better in every way. They repeated in her head like a cruel chorus. And yet, each repetition only hardened her resolve. For years, she had given him loyalty, believing love was about patience and sacrifice. She had ignored the subtle shifts, the way he stopped asking about her family, the way his compliments grew rarer, replaced with criticisms disguised as jokes. She remembered the first time he mocked her accent in front of his friends, how they had all laughed. She had laughed too, brushing it off, but her heart had sunk. Now she realized those moments had been cracks in the foundation. She had patched them with hope, but the structure was destined to collapse. Her gaze drifted to the window, where the city skyline stretched into the distance. Atlanta had been both her battleground and her triumph. She remembered her first apartment in the city, a cramped one-bedroom with peeling paint and faulty heating. She had worked 3 jobs then, mornings at the diner, afternoons cleaning offices, and late nights studying for her degree. Every dollar she saved had gone into her first investment, a rundown duplex in a struggling neighborhood. People had laughed at her then, too. Why waste money there, they had asked. But she had seen potential. She had fixed it up, rented it out, and reinvested the profits. Year after year, she repeated the cycle. By the time she met Andrew, her portfolio was quietly growing. And yet she never boasted, never flaunted, never felt the need to prove herself. Because her worth had never been tied to wealth. It was tied to her work ethic, her resilience, her vision. Andrew never understood that. The door creaked, breaking her thoughts. This time it wasn't Nurse Daniels. It was Andrew again. He walked in casually, as if nothing had happened earlier, sipping from a coffee cup. "You're quiet," he remarked, setting the cup down. "I suppose that's better than the dramatics." Amantia didn't respond. She kept her gaze fixed on the window. Andrew sighed, running a hand through his neatly styled hair. "Look, Amantia, don't take this the wrong way. I mean, you've been fine. But Claire, she's the future. You'll see eventually that it's for the best." She turned to face him slowly, her eyes steady. "The best for who, Andrew?" "For you." His jaw tightened. "Don't make this about me. You and I both know you don't belong in my world. I tried, Amantia. I really did. But you'll never be enough. Claire, she fits." His words sliced through the air like a blade. But this time, instead of wounding her, they sparked something different, clarity. For the first time in years, Amantia saw Andrew not as the man she had married, but as the man he truly was, small, insecure, hungry for validation, desperate to measure his worth against others. And she realized something remarkable. She wasn't the one who had been not enough. He was. As he droned on about Claire's family wealth and high society, Amantia's mind shifted elsewhere. She pictured her parents again, their rough but steady hands, their unwavering love. They had taught her what true partnership looked like, lifting each other, not tearing each other down. She thought of her brother, Dwayne, warning her years ago. "He na love you for who you are, Amantia. Him love what him tink he can get from you." And now everything made sense. Andrew had never truly seen her. Not her strength, not her ambition, not the empire she had quietly built. He had been blinded by his own arrogance, and soon that blindness would cost him dearly. Andrew's voice cut back through her thoughts. "Anyway, I'll be spending the night at Claire's. Don't wait up for me." He stood, adjusting his jacket as if heading to a business meeting rather than leaving his wife in a hospital bed. Without another glance, he walked out, the door clicking shut behind him. For a long moment, Amantia stared at the empty doorway, her chest heavy but her spirit sharp. She whispered softly into the stillness. "One day, Andrew Mark, you will regret every word you've spoken to me." And for the first time since his betrayal, she allowed herself a faint smile, not of joy but of certainty. The storm was building, and when it broke, she would not be the one left in ruins. Family, let me ask you, have you ever realized too late that someone never truly saw your worth? How did you handle it? Share your stories in the comments, and make sure to like this video and subscribe to support this channel. The hospital had quieted down by the time evening shadows stretched long across the polished floors. The beeping of monitors, once a steady backdrop to Amantia's thoughts, now seemed almost soothing. Andrew had not returned, and the silence he left behind felt like both a wound and a gift. Amantia lay back against her pillows, her eyes heavy but her mind alive. Every cruel word replayed in her memory, but rather than breaking her, they sharpened her focus. It was as if Andrew's betrayal had ripped a veil from her eyes, forcing her to see the truth of their marriage and the truth of herself. A soft knock came at the door. She turned her head, expecting Nurse Daniels again, but instead a familiar face peeked inside. "Permission to enter?" the voice asked warmly. Amantia's heart lifted. "Charles." The door swung open to reveal Charles Bennett, her longtime attorney and confidant. A tall black man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes. Charles carried himself with the calm authority of someone used to steering through storms. He wore a tailored gray suit, but his smile was warm, fatherly. "Miss Stone," he said with a hint of teasing formality as he stepped inside. "You gave us quite a scare." Relief washed over her. Charles wasn't just her lawyer. He was family in every way that mattered. When she first started investing, struggling to understand the legalities of property ownership and trusts, Charles had been the one to guide her. He had celebrated every victory, no matter how small, and reminded her of her power when she doubted herself. "I'm fine," Amantia replied softly. "Or at least I will be." Charles studied her carefully, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "I heard about Andrew." His tone was clipped, restrained, but his eyes burned with disapproval. "Of course you did," Amantia murmured, a trace of bitterness in her voice. "News like that travels fast, doesn't it?" Charles leaned forward, lowering his voice. "He doesn't know, does he? About the portfolio?" Amantia's lips curved into the faintest smile. "No. He thinks Claire is richer. He mocks me as if I have nothing." Charles shook his head slowly, exhaling. "Foolish man. If he had any idea the kind of empire you control." He let the thought trail off, his expression hardening. Her eyes glistened, but not from sadness. There was something empowering about knowing the truth, while Andrew lived in ignorance. "He doesn't deserve to know," she said firmly. "Not yet." Charles nodded approvingly. "You're right. Timing is everything. But Amantia, you can't let this continue unchecked. He's making a fool of himself, and of you. We need to protect what's yours." The words hung heavy in the air. Amantia thought back to earlier that day, to Claire's smirk, Andrew's sneer, their whispered insults. Every wound they had tried to inflict now felt like fuel for something bigger. "You've always told me to choose my battles," she said slowly. "And you're right. But this battle? This one I won't lose." Charles leaned back, a satisfied smile tugging at his lips. "That's the Amantia I know." For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the monitor's rhythmic beeping. But in that silence, Amantia felt something she hadn't in days: hope. Her fortune had always been more than money. It was the proof of her resilience, the fruit of her labor, the legacy she intended to pass on to the next generation. Andrew thought he held the upper hand, but he was about to learn that the woman he mocked from a hospital bed was a fortress he could never breach. Charles reached into his briefcase, pulling out a thick folder. "I brought the updated documents for your review. Everything is in order. The trust is secure, the properties are thriving, and your investments, well, let's just say they've grown even more than expected." Amantia's fingers brushed over the folder, and a surge of pride swelled in her chest. She had built this quietly, strategically, without fanfare. While Andrew paraded around with Claire, Chasing the appearance of wealth, she had cultivated the reality of it. "You've done well," Charles said softly, almost reverently. "Your parents would be proud." Those words hit her heart. Her parents, who had once begged her not to marry Andrew, had always believed in her strength. And though they were gone now, she felt their presence, their blessing, in every step she took. She straightened slightly, her voice stronger. "Andrew thinks I'm weak. He thinks Claire has more to offer. But when the time is right, I'll show them both the truth." Charles's eyes gleamed with quiet approval. "Then let's prepare for that day." Outside, thunder rumbled faintly again, a storm building on the horizon. Inside, Amantia's storm had already begun, and Andrew Mark had no idea it was coming. The hospital ward had grown quiet, the bustle of visiting hours fading as night pressed against the windows. Dim lights hummed softly in the hallway, casting long shadows across the floor. Amantia lay propped against her pillows, her body tired, but her spirit sharpening like steel. Charles remained by her side, the thick folder of documents resting unopened on the small table between them. They spoke in low voices, careful, deliberate. "You don't have to rush anything," Charles said, adjusting his glasses. "But remember, silence can be a weapon. Andrew's arrogance will make him careless. And when he stumbles, you'll be ready." Amantia nodded, her eyes fixed on the folder. "He thinks I'm nothing. Let him think it. The shock will be sweeter when the truth comes." Neither of them noticed the shadow lingering just outside the door. Andrew. He had returned to fetch something he had forgotten, though in truth he had been restless. Claire had demanded attention, but his ego had craved one last chance to gloat. Instead, as he approached the room, he froze when he heard Charles's voice. "The trust is secure, the portfolio is thriving. Your net worth now stands at." Andrew leaned closer, his heart skipping. Net worth? Portfolio? What was this? He pressed himself against the wall, listening as Charles continued. 700 million. Conservative estimates. And that doesn't include the international assets we're keeping under wraps for now. Andrew's jaw slackened. 700 million? He almost laughed, convinced his ears deceived him. He had mocked Amantia for years, treated her like a burden, convinced himself Claire was richer. But 700 million? That was impossible. Inside the room, Amantia's voice cut through his disbelief. Calm. Steady. Unshaken. "Not a word of this leaves your lips, Charles. Not yet. Andrew doesn't know. He mustn't know, not until the right time." Andrew's pulse quickened. His hands clenched at his sides. She was hiding money. A fortune. His wife, the woman he had just mocked, humiliated, abandoned in her weakest moment, was sitting on a gold mine. A surge of greed warred with anger inside him. Why hadn't she told him? Why had she kept this from him? He was her husband. He deserved to know. Didn't he? His mind raced with possibilities. Luxury cars, sprawling estates, access to circles of wealth he had only pretended to belong to. Claire's family money suddenly felt small, insignificant. But another thought slithered in. If she had hidden this for so long, what else had she hidden? And more importantly, did she plan to cut him out? Inside, Charles's voice softened. "Amantia, you've done more than build wealth. You've built freedom. Don't let Andrew, or anyone, strip that from you." Her reply was firm. "I won't. Not this time." Andrew stepped back from the door, his mind a storm. He could barely process the revelation. He wanted to storm inside, demand answers, force her to explain. But something stopped him, fear. If she had truly hidden this much from him, then maybe, just maybe, she was not as powerless as he thought. For the first time in their marriage, Andrew felt small. He turned and walked down the corridor, his polished shoes clicking against the floor, his face pale. His arrogance had cracked, and in its place bloomed something new, paranoia. Inside the room, Amantia closed her eyes, unaware of the eavesdropper just outside. Charles placed a hand on her shoulder. "Rest now. Tomorrow we'll make plans. Tonight, you just focus on healing." She nodded, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion. But even in her sleep, a whisper of determination lingered on her lips. "The storm is coming." Andrew couldn't sleep. He lay in the guest room of Claire's upscale condo that night, staring at the ceiling as her soft breathing filled the silence. She was curled against him, satisfied after a night of whispered promises and stolen intimacy. But Andrew's mind was far from at ease. 700 million. The number haunted him. He saw it everywhere, flashing across billboards in neon, hidden between the lines of news articles, echoing in the rhythm of passing traffic. $700 million, hidden beneath the modest life Amantia had allowed him to see. How long had she been hiding this? Why didn't she tell me? And most importantly, how do I get my hands on it? Claire stirred beside him, her arm draped across his chest. "You're restless," she murmured sleepily. "What's going on with you?" Andrew hesitated, his tongue itching to spill the truth, to tell her everything. But something held him back. If Claire knew about Amantia's fortune, she might not need him anymore. Worse, she might try to cut him out. "I'm just thinking about her," he said vaguely. Claire groaned, pulling away slightly. "Andrew, don't tell me you're feeling guilty. You've said yourself, your marriage is over." "She's nothing but dead weight." The words, once comforting, now rang hollow. Claire thought Amantia was nothing. Andrew had thought the same. But now he knew better. "She's not worth worrying about," Claire continued, her voice growing sharper. "You promised me, Andrew. You said you'd leave her. So when? When will you finally cut ties?" Andrew swallowed, his throat dry. "Soon. Just let me handle it." "Handle it quickly," Claire snapped, rolling over to face away from him. "Because I won't play second forever." Her words cut deeper than she realized. Once, Andrew had seen Claire as his golden ticket, the wealthy mistress with the pedigree and connections he craved. But compared to Amantia's hidden empire, Claire's allure suddenly felt dim. The next day, Andrew returned to the hospital, his usual swagger forced. He pushed open the door to Amantia's room, his smile a mask stretched too tight. Amantia glanced up, her expression unreadable. She was propped against her pillows, a book in her hands, her face calm despite the storm he had left her in. "Morning," Andrew said, his voice falsely cheerful. "How are you feeling?" Her eyes lingered on him, steady and sharp. "Better than yesterday." He shifted uncomfortably under her gaze, then tried to recover. "Good. That's good. You know, I was thinking, maybe we should talk." "About us?" Amantia raised an eyebrow. "Us?" "Yes," he said quickly, pulling the chair closer to her bed. "Look, I know things have been rocky. I haven't always been the best husband. But maybe we can start fresh." Her lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Start fresh." "Yes," he said again, leaning forward eagerly. "We've been through a lot together, and I don't want to throw it all away. Maybe we can," he hesitated, searching for the right words. "Rebuild." Amantia set her book down slowly, her gaze piercing through him. She said nothing, and the silence stretched until Andrew squirmed. Finally, she spoke. "Why now, Andrew?" His mouth opened, then closed. He couldn't very well say, "Because I just learned you're worth 700 million. Instead, he forced a shaky laugh. "Because you mean something to me, Amantia. More than I realized." Her eyes narrowed. She could see the cracks in his facade, the desperation lurking beneath the surface. He wasn't here out of love. He was here because he wanted something. "Claire must be thrilled to hear that," she said flatly. Andrew flinched, caught off guard. Claire doesn't mean anything. It was a mistake. You're my wife. That's what matters." Amantia leaned back, her voice calm but cutting. "You mock me when I'm at my weakest. You parade your mistress into my hospital room. And now you come here talking about rebuilding? Tell me, Andrew, what changed?" His jaw tightened. He wanted to shout, to demand answers about her fortune, but he bit back the urge. He had to be careful. If he moved too fast, she might shut him out completely. Nothing changed, he lied. I just realized what I stand to lose. Amancha's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. Yes, Andrew. You're about to lose more than you ever imagined. Her words sent a chill through him. For the first time, he felt as though he wasn't the one in control. Outside the window, the storm clouds gathered again, heavy and dark. Inside, Andrew Mark's world was beginning to unravel, and he didn't even know just how far he had to fall. Andrew left the hospital that evening with a tight smile plastered on his face, but inside, his mind was unraveling. Amancha's calm, cutting words still echoed in his ears. You're about to lose more than you ever imagined. He had gone there intending to play the devoted husband, to worm his way back into her trust. Instead, he left feeling exposed, as if she saw straight through him. And if that wasn't enough, Claire was waiting. Her condo smelled of white lilies and expensive wine, but the moment he walked through the door, he knew something was wrong. Claire sat on the edge of the sofa, arms folded, her jaw tight. You're late, she snapped. Andrew set his keys on the counter, forcing a casual tone. Traffic. Don't lie to me. Claire's eyes narrowed. You were with her again, weren't you? He hesitated. She's my wife, Claire. She's in the hospital. What do you expect me to do? Ignore her. Claire rose from the sofa, heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she closed the distance between them. What I expect, she said coldly, is for you to do what you promised. End it. File the divorce. Stop playing this little game of loyalty when we both know where your heart really is. Andrew flinched. Heart. If only she knew it wasn't love that had brought him back to Amancha's bedside, but the glimmer of a $700 million secret. I told you I'm handling it, he said, running a hand through his hair. Handling it? Claire scoffed. Andrew, it's been months. How much longer do you expect me to wait? My family thinks I'm a fool for wasting my time with you. She leaned closer, her voice sharp. Do you want me to be a fool? Her words sliced deep. Andrew hated being made to look weak, to feel as though he wasn't enough. That was why Claire had appealed to him in the first place. She made him feel powerful, validated. But now, the very thing that had drawn him to her was slipping. I'll fix it, he said through gritted teeth. I just need time. Claire studied him, suspicion clouding her eyes. You're hiding something. His stomach nodded. He forced a laugh. Don't be ridiculous. But she didn't look convinced. Meanwhile, in the quiet of her hospital room, Amancha sat with her journal open on her lap. The soft light from the lamp beside her cast a warm glow over the page as she wrote, her pen moving with deliberate strokes. She wrote about her parents, about the lessons they had instilled in her, strength, dignity, patience. She wrote about her mistakes, her blindness in loving Andrew, and how she had ignored the warnings from those who had loved her most. And then she wrote about her future. No more silence. No more weakness. My wealth is not just numbers on paper. It is freedom. It is power. It is proof of what I have built. He will know. They will both know. But on my terms. She closed the journal, her resolve solidifying. The storm within her had shifted. No longer was it the chaos of betrayal. Now it was the steady rumble of justice waiting to strike. The next morning, Andrew returned, his eyes shadowed from lack of sleep. Claire's demands rang in his ears, but so did Charles's voice from the night before. 700 million. Conservative estimates. He hovered in the doorway, watching Amancha as she sipped tea, her movements slow but graceful. She looked like a woman at peace, despite the wires and machines surrounding her. For a brief moment, Andrew wondered if he had ever really known her. Then greed surged again, drowning out every thought. If she truly had that kind of money, then he wasn't about to let her slip away. Not to Claire. Not to anyone. He stepped inside, his smile forced but his voice smooth. Good morning, darling. Amancha glanced up, her gaze calm, unflinching. She set her teacup down, folded her hands neatly in her lap, and simply said, "Morning, Andrew." No warmth, no anger, just a measured tone that unsettled him more than any outburst ever could. Because beneath her calm, he sensed its power. And for the first time, Andrew Mark wasn't sure if he was standing across from a broken woman or the storm that would destroy him. Andrew sat in the hospital cafeteria, his untouched cup of coffee growing cold. The hum of conversation surrounded him. Families whispering, nurses grabbing quick meals, doctors rushing through. But he heard none of it. His mind was spinning. He needed answers. Real ones. He couldn't shake Charles's words. 700 million, conservative estimates. For days, the number had haunted him, rattling around in his skull like a curse. But what if it wasn't true? What if he had misheard? Or worse, what if Amantia was planning to divorce him quietly, taking her fortune and leaving him with nothing? The thought made his stomach twist. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his messages. Claire's name lit the screen, her latest text sharp and impatient. "If you don't leave her soon, we're done." Andrew clenched his jaw. Claire was becoming more of a liability than a prize. But if Amantia truly had that kind of wealth, then Claire's threats didn't matter anymore. He wouldn't need her, not when he had access to 700 million. The problem was, he didn't know how to get to it. Not yet. That evening, as he slipped back into Amantia's hospital room, he found her asleep, her breathing soft and steady. Charles had already left, but the folder, the same thick folder he'd seen earlier, sat unattended on the small table near her bed. His pulse quickened. Glancing at the door, then at her sleeping face, he edged closer. The monitor beeped steadily, each sound amplifying the thud of his heart. His hands trembled as he reached for the folder. Slowly, carefully, he cracked it open. The first page hit him like a freight train. Stone Holdings, LLC, Consolidated Portfolio Summary. His eyes scanned the numbers, his breath catching. $732,450,000 net assets. Page after page confirmed it. Property deeds, investment statements, trust documents. Apartment complexes in Atlanta. Commercial properties in Miami. Shares in tech companies he recognized from the news. International assets held discreetly through shell corporations. It was real. All of it. Andrew's knees nearly buckled. He gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady himself as sweat beaded on his forehead. 700 million wasn't just wealth. It was power, influence, freedom. And all this time, she had kept it from him. Behind him, a soft voice cut through his thoughts. "Find what you were looking for." Andrew spun around, his face pale. Amantia was awake. Her eyes were open, fixed on him, calm and steady like the surface of deep water. She hadn't moved, hadn't shouted, but her presence filled the room like thunder. Andrew stammered. I was just looking through my things," she finished for him. Her voice was quiet, but there was no mistaking the steel beneath it. He swallowed hard. "Amantia, why didn't you tell me?" Her gaze didn't waver. "Because it was never yours to know." His mouth opened, closed. He couldn't find the words. The certainty he had always carried, the belief that he was smarter, sharper, more in control, crumbled beneath her calm stare. "You lied to me," he finally blurted, his voice rising. "You kept this from me." Amantia's lips curved into a faint smile. "No, Andrew. I protected myself. There's a difference." The silence that followed was suffocating. Andrew's thoughts spun wildly. He wanted to rage, to demand, to claim what he felt was rightfully his. But for the first time, he saw the truth in her eyes. He wasn't the master of this game. He was the pawn. Family, how would you feel if your partner discovered your deepest secret, your fortune, after mocking and betraying you? Would you confront them or let them stew in their guilt? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It helps us reach a wider audience. Andrew's hands shook as he fumbled to close the folder, his face flushed with guilt and panic. "Amantia," he said quickly, forcing a nervous laugh. I wasn't snooping. I dropped something, Anne." Her eyes narrowed slightly, and the quiet weight of her gaze silenced him. "You've always underestimated me, Andrew," she said softly. "You thought I was weak. You thought I had nothing. And yet here you are, digging through my life like a thief." The word stung. Thief. It echoed in Andrew's ears like a curse, because deep down, he knew it was true. He swallowed, trying to recover, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "I was shocked, that's all. I mean, 700 million? Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me?" Amantia tilted her head slightly. "Trust." Her tone was sharp, precise. "You parade your mistress into my hospital room, mock me in my weakest moment, and you dare to ask about trust?" Her words hit him like a slap, his face heating with shame and anger. He hated the way she looked at him now, calm, unafraid, in control. He forced a smile, leaning closer. "That was a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. But now I understand. We can start over, Amantia. We can build something together. With your wealth and my—" "Your greed," she interrupted, her voice flat. Andrew froze. She didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't accuse with wild gestures. Instead, her composure cut deeper than any outburst ever could. "You don't love me, Andrew. You never did. You loved what you thought I could give you. And when you believed I had nothing, you found someone else." Her calm dismantling of his lies left him gasping, scrambling for control. "I made mistakes," he insisted, his tone pleading now. "But Claire, she means nothing. I was confused. Don't throw away our marriage because of this. Think of everything we could do together with your money. Travel the world. Invest. Build an empire even bigger than what you already have." Amantia's expression didn't change. "I already built my empire. Without you." The silence that followed was suffocating. Andrew's chest tightened, his breath shallow. For the first time, he realized just how precarious his position was. He left the hospital in a haze, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He drove aimlessly through the city, the bright Atlanta skyline blurring through his windshield. Claire called twice, then 3 times, her name flashing angrily on his screen. He ignored her. He couldn't face her, not yet. Not when his mind was consumed by the image of Amantia, calm and untouchable, holding all the power he thought belonged to him. When he finally pulled into Claire's condo, she was waiting by the window, arms folded, her expression sharp. "You're avoiding me," she said flatly. Andrew forced a smile. "I've just been busy. Hospitals, you know." Claire's eyes narrowed. "Busy with her, you mean? Tell me, Andrew, what's keeping you there? Is it guilt? Or is it something else?" His chest tightened. For a split second, he almost confessed. Almost told her about the fortune, about the folder, about the 700 million reasons he couldn't just walk away. But then he remembered Amantia's warning gaze, her quiet power. If Claire knew, she'd sink her claws into it, and he couldn't risk losing control. "It's guilt," he lied smoothly. "Nothing more." Claire studied him, unconvinced, but said nothing. That night, as Andrew lay awake beside her, he realized something terrifying. He had thought he was the one orchestrating the game. But Amantia wasn't the weak pawn he imagined. She was the queen, and she was moving her pieces in silence, while he stumbled blindly across the board. The days that followed felt like a blur for Andrew, each one heavier than the last. He visited Amantia daily, but the dynamic between them had shifted completely. She no longer begged for his attention or tried to appease him. She sat tall, regal even, speaking little but cutting deep whenever she did. Her calm silence gnawed at him more than shouting ever could. Every time he entered her room, he felt like an intruder, unwelcome and exposed. Meanwhile, Claire was growing impatient. One evening, In her pristine condo, filled with gleaming marble counters and abstract paintings, she confronted him. She stood by the fireplace, her glass of wine untouched, her eyes sharp as daggers. "Andrew," she said coldly, "I'm not a fool. Something's changed. You're distracted. Nervous. What is it?" Andrew stiffened, his pulse quickening. He had rehearsed excuses, work stress, hospital fatigue, but none of them would satisfy Claire. She was relentless, and he knew it. "You're imagining things," he muttered, loosening his tie. "No," she snapped. "You're hiding something. You think I can't tell? You've been running back and forth to that hospital like a guilty husband, and every time you come back, you look like you've seen a ghost. What is it?" He hesitated. For a fleeting moment, the urge to confess overwhelmed him. He wanted to share the secret, to unburden himself, to watch her eyes widen at the thought of 700 million. But then, just as quickly, the image of her exploiting it, cutting him out, using him, slammed into his mind. He shook his head firmly. "It's nothing. Just stress." Claire stepped closer, her voice lowering. "If you're keeping something from me, Andrew, I will find out. And when I do, don't expect me to forgive you." Her words hung in the air like smoke, suffocating him. Back at the hospital, Amantia sat with her journal again, her pen gliding across the page. She had stopped writing about her pain. Now she wrote about strategy. Andrew is unraveling. His visits are filled with false charm, but his eyes betray him. He's afraid. And Claire, she's growing restless. They will turn on each other soon. I don't need to rush. I just need to wait. She closed the journal, a calm smile tugging at her lips. The following morning, Andrew arrived with flowers, a gaudy bouquet of red roses wrapped in shiny plastic. "For you," he said, forcing a smile. Amantia glanced at the bouquet briefly, then back at him. "They're lovely. Did Claire pick them out?" The color drained from his face. She chuckled softly, a sound without warmth. "Relax, Andrew. I know where you've been." His throat tightened. "Amantia, please." "Please what?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Please believe you. Please ignore the fact that you've been parading another woman around while your wife lay in a hospital bed." He stammered, searching for words. But before he could answer, she leaned forward slightly, her eyes locking on his. "Do you know what the funny thing is, Andrew?" she asked. "You thought you were playing me, but I've been watching you. Every word, every move. And when the time comes, I won't need to raise my voice. The truth will speak louder than anything you could ever say." The air in the room grew thick. Andrew's palms grew damp, his heart racing. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. For the first time, he wondered if he was the one being hunted. That night, as he lay beside Claire, his mind was a storm. He had built his life on control, manipulation, and appearances. But now, control was slipping through his fingers. Claire was pressuring him. Amantia was outsmarting him. And worst of all, he couldn't shake the image of that folder, of those numbers printed in black ink, undeniable and real. 700 million. The fortune that could change everything, or destroy him. The next evening, Claire paced her condo, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She had been watching Andrew closely for days, and her patience was running out. "You're hiding something," she said again, her voice cold and precise. "I can feel it. You come back from the hospital looking like you've seen the devil himself. What are you not telling me?" Andrew, slouched in an armchair, rubbed his temples. "Claire, you're imagining things. I told you, Amantia's condition is stressful. That's all." Claire scoffed, her blue eyes narrowing. "Stress doesn't make a man sweat like you do. Stress doesn't make a man flinch every time I mention her name. There's something you're not saying, Andrew. And if you think you can keep it from me, you're wrong." Her words hit him like a whip. He shifted uneasily, his mind torn between fear and greed. He wanted to tell her, to unburden himself of the secret he had stumbled upon. But he also wanted to keep it to himself, to savor the possibility of what that fortune could mean for him alone. "I don't owe you every detail of my life," he muttered, standing to pour himself a drink. Claire's laugh was sharp, humorless. "Don't forget who you're talking to. I'm not some desperate girl you picked up at a bar. My family has influence, Andrew. Power. If you think you can play me, you'll regret it." The glass shook slightly in his hand as he poured the whiskey. Her words were too close to the truth, too close to the game he was trying to play. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Amantia was already 3 steps ahead. She sat upright in her bed, her hair neatly braided, her presence dignified despite the wires and machines around her. Charles had returned with updates, and together they spoke in hushed tones. "The documents are secure," he assured her. "The trusts are airtight. Even if Andrew tries something, he won't get far." Amantia's lips curved into a calm smile. "I know, but I want him to try. I want him to show himself for who he really is. That way, when the truth comes out, there will be no denying it." Charles nodded, admiration in his eyes. "You've always been wise, Amantia. Patient. This is how you win, by letting him destroy himself." She glanced toward the door, as if sensing Andrew's presence even before he arrived. "And he will. I know him better than he knows himself." That night, Andrew stormed back into the hospital room, his face flushed, his movements frantic. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, slamming the door behind him. Amantia looked up from her journal, her expression unshaken. "Tell you what?" He stepped closer, his eyes wild. "Don't play dumb with me. The money, Amantia. The properties. The fortune you've been hiding all these years. 700 million. Did you ever plan to share it with me, or was I just a joke to you?" His voice rose with every word, echoing down the corridor. But Amantia didn't flinch. She closed her journal calmly, folded her hands in her lap, and said, "You've already answered your own question, Andrew. That fortune was never yours. It was mine long before you came into my life, and it will remain mine long after you're gone." Her steady voice was more devastating than a scream. Andrew staggered back, the full weight of her words sinking in. He had come to intimidate her, to guilt her, to claw his way back into control. Instead, he left feeling smaller than ever. Back at Claire's, his rage boiled over. He downed 2 more glasses of whiskey before blurting out the truth. "She's been hiding money from me. Not just money, hundreds of millions. 700, to be exact." Claire froze, her glass halfway to her lips. Slowly, she set it down, her eyes narrowing with predatory interest. 700 million? She repeated softly. Andrew nodded, his face twisted in desperation. "It's ours if we play it right. But we need to move fast, before she shuts me out completely." For the first time in days, Claire's anger shifted into something else, hunger. Her lips curved into a slow, calculating smile. "Then what are we waiting for?" The storm outside mirrored the one raging inside the hospital walls. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder rolled across the Atlanta skyline, and lightning cut jagged lines into the night sky. Inside her hospital room, Amantia lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Despite her calm resolve, the weight of everything pressed on her chest. Betrayal from the man she once loved. Humiliation from a mistress who dared to stand over her hospital bed. The knowledge that her secret was out, her carefully guarded fortune exposed. She whispered into the quiet room, her voice raw. "Mama, Papa, I wish you were here." For the first time in days, tears slipped down her cheeks. She let them fall, but only for a moment. Then she brushed them away, straightened her shoulders, and steadied her breathing. She was Amantia Stone, daughter of Jamaica, survivor, builder, fighter. She could bend, but she would not break. Meanwhile, across town, Andrew and Claire sat in her sleek living room, the storm rattling the tall windows behind them. A half-empty bottle of wine sat on the table, ignored as the two of them argued. We have to act now, Claire insisted, her voice sharp. 700 million doesn't just fall into your lap twice. If she changes her will, if she locks you out, it's over. Andrew paced the room, his face pale. And how do you suggest we act, Claire? March into her lawyer's office and demand the keys to the kingdom? It's not that simple. It could be, Claire countered, her eyes gleaming with ambition. You're her husband. You have rights. All you need is leverage. Make her believe she still needs you. Make her believe you'll stand by her. Andrew stopped pacing, his jaw tightening. You think I haven't tried? She sees through me now. She's not the same Amantia I married. Claire scoffed. Then you'd better find a way to make her that woman again. Because if you don't, Andrew, I will. He turned sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Claire smirked, sipping her wine. It means if you can't control her, maybe I can. 700 million is too sweet to walk away from. And I don't mind playing nice if it gets me a slice. His face twisted with rage, but beneath it was fear. The woman who had once stroked his ego was now threatening to replace him in the very scheme he thought he controlled. The next day, they appeared together at the hospital. Amantia's eyes flicked between them as they entered, side by side. For a moment, she almost laughed. The two of them, united by greed, standing in front of her like a pair of predators circling their prey. But she said nothing. Andrew stepped forward first, his voice falsely tender. Amantia, we've been thinking. Maybe we all started off on the wrong foot. Maybe it's time we come together. Together? She echoed, her eyebrow arched. Claire's smile was sharp as glass. There's no need for hostility, Amantia. We can all benefit here. Why make things difficult when you have so much? Share a little, and everyone wins. Amantia studied them, her face unreadable. Inside, her stomach churned. The audacity of it, her husband and his mistress, standing in her hospital room, asking for a piece of the fortune she had built with her own blood and sweat. Andrew's voice grew desperate. Don't you see? You don't have to carry this alone. With me, us, you'll never want for anything again. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. You think I want for anything now? The words hung in the air, slicing their fragile alliance. Claire's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. Andrew clenched his fists at his sides. For the first time, they both realized they weren't standing before a fragile woman on a hospital bed. They were standing before a fortress. But when they left the room, their unity cracked. In the elevator, Claire turned on him, her voice low and vicious. She doesn't need you, Andrew. She doesn't even see you. You're nothing to her now. If you want to hold on to me, you'd better prove you can deliver. Otherwise, I'll find my own way into her good graces. Andrew's chest tightened, panic rising. He had thought Claire was his ally. But now, she looked more like a rival, and maybe even a bigger threat than Amantia. For the first time, Andrew Mark felt the walls closing in. The storm outside raged through the night, and in many ways, it mirrored the chaos inside Amantia's soul. She sat upright in bed, her body weary, her spirit strained. For all her strength, for all her quiet resilience, the reality still stung. The man she had once defied her family for, the man she had once called her partner, now stood united with his mistress against her. The image of Andrew and Claire standing side by side in her hospital room replayed like a cruel film reel. Their arrogance, their entitlement, their audacity to ask her, for a share of what she had built with her own hands. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Amantia, me daughter, some people only see you for what they can take, not for who you are. She whispered into the darkness. You were right, Mama. Her voice cracked, and for a brief moment she allowed the tears to fall. But only for a moment. Because she knew her parents hadn't raised her to break, they had raised her to fight. Across town, Andrew and Claire's alliance was already fracturing. They sat in her sleek condo, the storm howling against the tall windows, their voices sharp as knives. You looked weak in there, Claire snapped, pacing the room, begging her like some desperate fool. If you can't control her, then what good are you to me? Andrew shot to his feet, his face flushed with anger. Weak? You think I'm weak? I've kept this marriage together for 10 years. I've managed her, kept her grounded. Claire laughed coldly. Managed her? Andrew, she's the one with the fortune, not you. You've been living off her scraps without even realizing it. And now she's looking at you like you're nothing. Because you are nothing to her. Her words hit him like a slap. Rage boiled in his chest, but beneath it was something far worse, fear. She was right. For the first time in his life, Andrew wasn't holding the cards. Amantia was. He grabbed Claire's arm, his voice low and threatening. Watch how you speak to me. She yanked her arm free, her eyes flashing. Or what? You'll leave me for her? Don't make me laugh. You can't even leave her because without her, you have nothing. You're trapped, Andrew. Trapped between the wife who doesn't need you and the mistress who's growing tired of waiting. Her words hung in the air like poison. Andrew sank back into the chair, burying his face in his hands. For the first time, he felt the full weight of the trap he had walked into. Back in her hospital room, Amantia confided in Charles when he visited the next morning. They came together, she said softly, her eyes weary but burning with quiet fire. Can you imagine? My husband and his mistress, standing there, asking me to share my wealth with them as if it were theirs. Charles's jaw tightened, fury flashing in his eyes. The nerve, the audacity. Amantia sighed. For a moment it broke me. To see them together, united in greed, it hurt more than I can explain. But then I realized something. She sat up straighter, her voice steadying. They're desperate. Desperation makes people sloppy. They'll destroy each other if I give them enough rope. Charles leaned forward, his voice firm. And when they do, you'll be ready. Amantia nodded. Her lips curved into the faintest smile, though her eyes still glistened with pain. Yes, but first, I must endure the storm, even when it feels like it might swallow me whole. That night, as thunder rattled the hospital windows, Amantia closed her eyes, her chest heavy. For a moment, she felt the weight of loneliness press hard against her soul. But then she whispered into the dark, a vow carried only by the storm. I will not let them break me. I will rise. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the city washed clean under a pale blue sky. But inside Amantia's hospital room, the air was thick with tension, as if the thunder still lingered between the walls. Charles sat beside her bed, reviewing documents with quiet precision, when the door slammed open. Andrew, and behind him Claire. They entered like a pair of vultures circling prey, their faces tense but determined. Amantia glanced up calmly, her lips curving into the faintest smile. How charming. The two of you together again. Did you bring popcorn for the show? Claire sneered. Enough games, Amantia. We're not here to play. Andrew stepped forward, trying to mask his desperation with authority. Amantia, this has gone far enough. You've kept secrets from me, secrets that should have been mine to know. I'm your husband. I have rights. Her eyebrow arched. Rights? Yes, he snapped. 700 million. That's not just your money, it's ours. You've been hiding it, deceiving me. But I'm not going to let you keep it from me any longer. Charles rose to his feet, his voice sharp. Watch yourself, Andrew. That fortune is legally protected. You have no claim to it. Andrew's face flushed. He turned back to Amantia, ignoring Charles. You can't really mean to cut me out. After everything I've done for you, everything we've been through. Amantia's laughter cut him off, soft but razor-sharp. Everything you've done for me? Do you mean mocking me while I lay in this bed? Parading your mistress into my room? Or telling me I was never enough? Her voice rose, steady and powerful now, filling the room. Tell me, Andrew, which of those things earned you the right to my fortune? Andrew opened his mouth, but no words came. His face contorted with anger, But beneath it was fear, the fear of a man who finally realized he had no control. Claire stepped forward then, her tone dripping with false sweetness. Amantia, let's be reasonable. You have more than enough. 700 million is too much for one person. Share a little, and we can all walk away happy. Amantia's eyes locked on hers, unblinking. You waltzed into my hospital room, laughed at my pain, and called yourself better than me. And now you want me to share. She shook her head slowly. No, Claire. I don't share with thieves. Claire's mask slipped, her face twisting with frustration. Careful, she hissed. You don't know who you're dealing with. Oh, I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Amantia replied calmly. A desperate woman clinging to a man who doesn't even love her. You think Andrew chose you because you're better? He chose you because he thought I was weak. But look around, Claire. Who's really in control here? Claire's lips parted, but no sound came. Andrew stood frozen, torn between rage and humiliation. His entire plan, to intimidate, to guilt, to manipulate, was unraveling before his eyes. And Amantia? She hadn't even raised her voice. Charles placed a steady hand on Amantia's shoulder, his voice firm. Enough of this circus. If either of you attempts to harass my client again, I'll make sure charges are filed. Financial, legal, personal, you'll both regret it. Andrew bristled. You can't scare me with lawyers. But his voice shook, betraying him. Amantia leaned forward slightly, her gaze piercing. He doesn't need to scare you, Andrew. I already have. Because for the first time in your life, you see me for who I truly am. Not the woman you mocked. Not the wife you dismissed. But the storm you never saw coming. The room fell silent, the weight of her words pressing down like gravity. For the first time, Andrew, Mark, and Claire realized the truth. They weren't the predators. They were the prey. The silence in the hospital room was suffocating, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. Andrew and Claire stood frozen, their smugness shattered, their confidence slipping away. Amantia sat tall against her pillows, her gaze steady, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut steel. You've both mistaken me for a fool, she began. Andrew, you thought my love blinded me. Claire, you thought your arrogance could intimidate me. But the truth is, I saw you both long before you saw me. Andrew shifted uneasily, his hands clenching and unclenching. Amantia, please, we can work this out. Just give me a chance to prove myself. Prove yourself, she repeated with a bitter laugh. The only thing you've proven is your greed. Her eyes flicked to Claire. And you swaggered in here with your perfume and polished words, convinced you were above me. But tell me, Claire, how does it feel to discover that the woman you mocked from her hospital bed is worth $700 million? Claire's lips parted in shock, her face blanching. She turned to Andrew as if to confirm the number, but the shame written across his face told her everything she needed to know. 700 million? She whispered, her voice trembling. Amantia nodded once, her expression unyielding. Yes. Every property, every investment, every business decision. I built them quietly while the two of you lived loud and shallow. While you sneered at me, I created an empire. While you underestimated me, I surpassed you 1,000 times over. Andrew's knees nearly buckled. He staggered toward her bed, his voice desperate. Amantia, listen to me. We don't have to fight. I was wrong, I admit it. I was blind, but I see now. We can start fresh. We can. Stop, Amantia interrupted, her voice like a whip. You don't love me, Andrew. You never did. You loved what you thought I didn't have, and now you love what you know I do. But love that comes with a price tag isn't love at all. It's a transaction, and this transaction is over. Her words landed like thunder, shaking the room with their finality. Claire, regaining her composure, tried to pivot. Amantia, listen, I didn't mean to disrespect you. We just thought. You thought wrong. Amantia cut her off coldly. And let me be clear, not a dime of my fortune will ever touch your hands. Not yours, Claire. Not Andrew's. You came into my life uninvited, and today you leave the same way. Charles, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward with the folder in hand. He opened it, flipping to a page covered in bold, undeniable numbers. He held it up for them to see. $732 million, he said firmly. All legally protected, all out of your reach. If either of you attempts to interfere, there are safeguards in place that will bury you in court for the rest of your lives. Andrew's face drained of color. Claire stumbled back a step, her breath catching in her throat. You can't do this. Andrew shouted, his voice breaking. I'm your husband. I'm entitled to something. Amantia's eyes narrowed. You're entitled to nothing. You broke your vows long before you walked into this room with her. You mocked me, betrayed me, abandoned me. A husband in name alone is no husband at all. She leaned forward slightly, her voice low but carrying the weight of final judgment. You wanted me broken. But today, Andrew Mark, you stand broken before me. The silence that followed was deafening. Claire's face twisted with fury. Andrew's shoulders slumped, his arrogance finally crushed. And Amantia? She looked radiant, not because of wealth, but because of freedom. She had finally spoken her truth, and nothing would ever bind her again. Family, if you were in Amantia's position, would you forgive Andrew and Claire? Or would you cut them off completely, just like she did? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe. The resolution to this story is going to inspire you even more. The confrontation had left the hospital room heavy with silence. Andrew and Claire had stormed out, humiliated, their plans in ruins. Charles gathered the folder, his face calm but satisfied. Amantia leaned back against her pillows, closing her eyes for a moment. For the first time in weeks, her chest felt lighter. She had faced them. She had spoken her truth. And though it hurt to acknowledge how deeply she had been betrayed, the weight of silence was gone. Charles touched her hand gently. You've done more than protect your fortune, Amantia. You've reclaimed your dignity. That's worth more than all the money in the world. She smiled faintly. And yet, the money will come in handy too. They both laughed softly, a release of tension, the kind of laughter that came when a storm had passed. Across the city, Andrew and Claire sat in tense silence in her condo. The air between them was toxic, thick with blame and resentment. Claire was the first to speak, her voice icy. You didn't tell me. You knew about the money, and you didn't tell me. Andrew's jaw clenched. If I had told you, you'd have cut me out and gone after it yourself. Claire's laugh was bitter. And what did keeping it to yourself get you? Nothing. She humiliated you, Andrew. She humiliated us both. Andrew's face twisted with rage, but beneath the anger was something worse, fear. For the first time, he realized his safety net was gone. Amantia was done with him. Claire was slipping away. And the future he had clung to, a future built on Amantia's fortune, had evaporated before his eyes. You think you're better than me? He spat. Claire stood, grabbing her purse. I don't need to think it. I know it. And if you had any pride left, you'd stop groveling and start figuring out who you are without her. She stormed out, the sound of the door slamming echoing through the empty condo. Andrew sank into the sofa, his head in his hands. For the first time, he felt truly alone. Back in the hospital, Amantia received a call that warmed her heart more than any number on a financial statement ever could. Amantia. Her brother's voice, Dwayne, came through the phone. She smiled, tears welling in her eyes. Yes, Dwayne. It's me. He paused, his voice soft. I heard about Andrew. I heard what he did to you. I should have been there. Amantia's voice trembled. You were right, Dwayne. Mama was right. I didn't listen. But I'm listening now. Silence hung for a moment, then his voice came stronger. Then come home, Amantia. When you're ready, come home. We'll welcome you with open arms. Her tears fell freely this time, not from pain, but from healing. "Thank you, brother," she whispered. "I will." As she ended the call, she felt something shift deep within her. She wasn't just free from Andrew. She was free to return to her roots, to the family who had loved her before anyone else, to the island that had given her strength. Her fortune was secure, her dignity restored, and her future, hers alone to shape. 2 weeks later, the hospital discharged Amantia. The crisp autumn air brushed against her skin as she stepped outside, a free woman in more ways than one. Charles walked beside her, carrying the folder that symbolized not just her wealth, but her survival. Andrew had not returned. Claire had vanished from the picture, leaving only silence in her wake. And Amantia? She didn't need either of them anymore. Her flight touched down in Montego Bay, just as the sun dipped low over the horizon. The golden glow bathed the island in warmth, and the familiar scent of salt air and blooming hibiscus filled her senses. For the first time in years, she felt truly home. Her brother Dwayne waited at the airport. When their eyes met, years of distance dissolved in an instant. "Amantia," he said, his voice breaking. She rushed into his arms, holding him tightly as tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry, Dwayne. I should have listened. But I'm here now. I'm home." He hugged her fiercely. "No more sorry, sis. You're safe. That's all that matters." The following Sunday, she sat at the family table, surrounded by cousins, nieces, nephews, neighbors. Laughter filled the air as they shared curried goat, rice and peas, fried plantains, and stories of old times. For years, Amantia had felt like an outsider, torn between two worlds. But here, among her people, she found her center again. When the children begged her to tell a story, she smiled and leaned forward. "Once upon a time," she began, "there was a woman who thought love was about giving everything, even when nothing was given back. She almost lost herself. But then she remembered where she came from. She remembered her worth. And she rose again, stronger, wiser, freer." The children clapped. The adults nodded knowingly. Dwayne raised his glass. "To Amantia, the strongest among us." "To Amantia," the table echoed. As the night wore on, Amantia stepped outside, gazing at the stars scattered across the Caribbean sky. She felt her parents' presence in the breeze, their voices whispering in her heart. "You're worth more than gold, Amantia." She smiled, placing a hand over her chest. "Yes," she whispered back. "I know it now." Far away, Andrew sat alone in his empty apartment, drowning in regret. Claire had left him, his reputation was ruined, and the wealth he once mocked now haunted him as a reminder of what he could never touch. But Amantia no longer thought of him. His chapter in her story was closed. Her story was no longer about betrayal. It was about rebirth. She returned to her roots, used her fortune to build schools and clinics across Jamaica, and invested in programs that lifted her community. She became not just a wealthy woman, but a symbol of strength, resilience, and unity. And when people asked about her past, she smiled and said only, "Sometimes, storms come to clear the path. Mine cleared the way for me to finally see who I was always meant to be." Amantia Stone, once mocked on her hospital bed, rose not just as a survivor, but as a queen. Her betrayal became her blessing, her pain became her power, and her fortune became her legacy of love.
Thank you so much, family, for staying with me all the way to the end of this story. The greatest lesson here is simple but powerful. Never let betrayal or mockery define your worth. Real strength comes from knowing who you are, standing tall in the face of pain, and turning heartbreak into power. If this story touched your heart, please support the channel by subscribing, hitting that like button, and sharing this video with your friends and loved ones. Your support means the world to us. It also helps us keep bringing you stories that inspire and empower. I promise you, another powerful story is coming tomorrow, so make sure your notifications are on. And before you go, don't miss the video right here on the screen. It's one you'll definitely want to see next.